Hi, and thank you for joining. Today we have with us SimpleFi's VP Platform and Technology, Eric Blondin, who is presenting on SAP Analytics Cloud and our experience with the new model. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Eric. If you have questions during the session, feel free to submit them via the chat box. And thank you for joining. Eric,
Thank you,
please
John.
go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. So today, the objective is really to share our first project experience running with the SAC new model. You've all seen the presentations. You've probably seen demos of what can be done in there. Obviously, it's going to turn out into a demo itself as we walk through the new model options and some limitations we've met going through a project. But here today, it's really, I've tried to pull out as much information we got from the project we ran and just completed last month. Before going into this, though, I'd like to give you a quick introduction of SimpleFi. Some of you may not know us. Some of you may be joining our webinar for the first time. So let's do a quick walkthrough of who SimpleFi is and what we actually do. So intro to SimpleFi, talk quickly about prepackaged solutions. One of the reasons, as most of you are probably aware, SAC has a lot of potential. SimpleFi, we've invested a lot in prepackaged solutions on a lot of content. I'll get into that just for a minute. And a lot of that will need to be reevaluated, obviously, in the context of the new model. So I'm going to talk about these prepackaged solutions, and I'm actually going to launch with one of our prepackaged solutions as it is today, not on a new model, and then go and have a look how this new model improves or limits, in some cases, how this prepackaged solution was built out. Okay, and then obviously we'll go into tool and talk quickly about how we can do some of the things, show you live what some of the nice functionalities are, and also some of the limitations we've met there, okay? So first of all, SimpleFi, we are fully focused on analytics and planning solutions for Office CFO, CIO. So we really design, we help enterprises on board on consolidations and planning, and we focus entirely on SAP solutions. So if you look at it here, our specialties are really Analytics Cloud, which is our subject today, and then all the back-end technologies that get involved in this. Obviously, we are staffed by CPAs, MBAs, people with a lot of our people have over 10 years experience in SAP financial solutions, and our leadership team has over 15 years experience implementing these solutions. And then we help our customers implement it, train themselves, or even help them manage their existing solution. One thing to keep in mind, and we are a niche SAP partner, so our goal is to really get 100% referenceable customers. Every project is extremely important to us, as this is really our bread and butter, and we need people to trust us and keep on wanting to work with us. Today, we are based in Chicago with an office in Montreal, Canada. I'm actually talking to you today from the Montreal area. And we've had great success with a lot of our customers in the past few years. And looking at the SAC, this is really what we've been looking at the last year. I think 95% of our projects have been on SAC, and that's really what motivated us in building the prepackaged solutions I mentioned earlier. So today we'll really focus on the P&L planning solutions, but we can cover a lot of planning content within SAC, lots of analytics and some industry-specific requirements as well, and also some modernization programs like you have BPC today or other non-SAP planning solutions, and we have great experience migrating these solutions into SAC. We have a few ongoing projects right now, and we've actually completed a few, and feedback is incredible. So, and one last thing about SimpleFi, what would you want to do, work with us? Obviously, every project we deliver, we want to use as a reference. So that's already a top motivation as we start a project. Planning and analytics is all we do. Our people are FP&A experts. They've been in FP&A for the longest time. I'm probably the exception within SimpleFi, as my backend is a lot into technologies, BW, BO, SAC, obviously all the backend technologies, but I've been working with finance experts for years. So this has also become one of my main specialties, although I'm more on the IT side myself compared to the rest of the company. But since we focus on planning and analytics, you won't suddenly get stuck with where we're finishing up an S4 major project that requires a lot of our people to get involved into it. We focus on these planning and analytics requirements in SAC, in BPC, in those core solutions that SAP provides. And right now, it's really fully SAC. This is really what we see today on the market. And one of the last very important things, we are extremely flexible. That's the advantage also of us being focused on these specific expertise. So there's no red tape, there's no multiple layers to get something resolved. If you're working with us, you have a client partner assigned, and we'll make sure everything will be fixed very efficiently. So that was my quick introduction to SimpleFi. Didn't want to spend too much time on this, but still wanted to make sure everyone has a good idea of who SimpleFi is as we go forward. Now, going quickly into the prepackaged solutions, I won't spend too much time in there, but some of the key elements in there are actually have an influence at how we will implement the new model into our solution. So first of all, as I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of content, and we publish this in different catalogs into SAC. You can actually go on the SAP store today. If you missed our posts on LinkedIn recently and on our website, some of them are available in the SAP store now. So go ahead and have a look. If not, go on our website. You'll see a lot of other prepackaged solutions that are not yet all on the SAP store, but it will give you a very good overview of the kind of content we're able to deliver and that we can use as a starting point. We don't start a project by asking you what you want. We start a project by showing you things others have done. We implement it in your system as a starting point, and from that working solution, we can then move forward and really have best of breed planning solutions within SAC. So these are a few indications. When I'll go into tool, I'll quickly show other content from a high level perspective. But one thing that's interesting also is our prepackaged content. Each component talks to another. Here I simplified it, obviously, but if you start doing HR planning, you have all your costs related to HR. That feeds into expense, and then that feeds into your P&L. So all these different components all feed into one another. So even though they're separate models, it's all fully integrated. So your whole FP&A function in the end is fully organized, structured, and a very streamlined process into SAC. I'm talking about this now because these are SAC models, and you will see that with the new model, there are challenges when we have multiple models, and that's obviously one of the challenges you'll need to keep in mind if you decide to go ahead and implement a model using the new model. Okay, sounds repetitive. The one I'm going to use as a kind of a starting point here is a financial reporting and analysis bridge reports. Okay, these have been some of our kind of most popular reports where we really can show you a bridge report on your P&L where you see the variations between your budget and your actuals, and you have all of your different filters, and then you can actually have your comparisons for your P&L and be really able to have a complete picture of your P&L. This is something we implement regularly, and actually the project I'm going to be referencing to today, it was the implementation of the bridge report. That's it for the slides, and we'll now go actually into the demo and actually really looking at the tool. Two things I'm going to do before going into the demo, though, is talking about what we found as the big wins going forward in the implementing bridge report, and then another slide, what were the big limitations. There are documented limitations, but we may not always realize what those actual limitations are when we implement SAC new model. So Excuse me. Take a sip of water and I'll be right back. So first of all, live and flexible exchange rates. We'll go in there. Obviously, I'm currently using a P&L report book as my support for presentation. So unit conversion is in there, but we did not use it in this project. But from everything we've tested, these are really important improvements. It adds a lot of value to how you can use exchange rates into SAC. So we will talk about this. Flexible data wrangling screen, still a few limitations there, but still a great step. Anyone who hasn't been implementing SAC will probably look at this and figure, okay, that wasn't there before. No, it wasn't, and that's where it becomes a great improvement. And having measures distinct from account dimension, it's not that much of an improvement, although it does bring some interesting options. But for someone like me who's from the BW world in the past, having this actually brings SAC modeling much closer to most other SAP modeling solutions. The only exceptions being BPC standard. If you look at it, SAC was designed with BPC standard solutions in mind and the way it was using the accounts. Now we're going to see how that having measures separate actually aligns with the other solutions. You can still use the account dimension by itself, but you now have added flexibility into SAC. Few things that we found annoying in our project, and I'll show you why in a minute. Key limitations, yes. Master data support. So you'll see what I mean in there when we go in. I did not realize what that meant when I saw that SAP document saying master data support is limited. What does that mean? Well, I'll show you. You'll see what that means exactly. Cross-model copy from between original and new model. Okay, you remember I showed you the how our prepackaged content works, copying different steps from one model to the next. Well, if we decided to start converting our prepackaged content on the new model, we would need to convert everything at once, or else we would start being stuck, not being able to copy anything from one model to the next. That part I won't demo. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. When you create a copy function, if you start on a classic model, you won't see a new model as a destination. That's pretty much it. So that one, obviously, for us, is going to be a major limitation. You could ask yourself, okay, we could decide to go and do everything on a new model. But then there are other limitations. I've already mentioned master data support, allocations. So allocations is very important when you implement financial planning, and you're not able to do financial allocations with the new model right now. It will come, but until it's there and fully tested, that limits us from a financial planning perspective. And this means our whole environment cannot be migrated to the new model until this is done. And something else that pretty much the final step before I go into tool, pretty much something that convinces us to take our time converting our prepackaged content is the actual conversion. So you have an existing model as a classic model, there is a button, convert to new model. It will convert the model. If there's a story, if there's a data action, if there's anything plugged into it, it's going to ask you to delete them before you can do your conversion. And then you will need to rebuild them. So you cannot copy story from a classic model to a new model. I actually found a blog on this earlier on, and I was quite happy that was possible. But even though the blog did state we could copy from classic model to new model, but when you try it in the tool, that doesn't work. So when you convert, you end up having a blank model, and then you can go in your existing stories, remap, kind of rebuild everything from that one, but you lose everything. You'll need to slowly redo all the charts and everything. So this is really something that's very important that will need to evolve so that our data actions follow, stories follow, and everything. So these limitations in mind, the new model still brings interesting options depending on the scope of your SAC project. If you're wondering when some of these functionalities are being fixed. I really invite everyone, I'm going to go into browser here. I really invite everyone to get used to going to roadmaps.sap.com. This is SAP's roadmap. Whoops. And it shows you where SAP plans on updating different functionalities. So right now, Q3, that's coming up in August, I think in 2 weeks, pretty much. These are a lot of functionalities are coming up that will, again, improve what you have in SAC. So this is really something to look at. Even if you're not looking at a new model, there's always interesting things that are coming up. And you can look in here, modeling new models, second release. So you see in Q3 in August, this is coming up, and you can already start having a look, like allocation support. So for us, that's going to be a major improvement. So that's something we will be looking at, and other functionalities I won't be talking, as we did not cover those during our project. Okay, so let's get into SAC. So first of all, this is our P&L report book. I'm going to go first and start from the home page. So as you get into SAC, you have this is a standard entry page, and this I mentioned earlier. Let's go into catalogs. This is where we have all our different content that we've built out over the last year and a half, really based on our experience running projects with customers. So everything is in here. So if there's a subject you see on our website you'd like to cover, to understand, see what's possible there, it's part of our content. Contact us and we'll gladly demo it to you to show you what's possible there and see what it would amount to implement it into your environment. Most of these are pre-built. They can really be used. They're source agnostic. Obviously, we're specialized. Most of our projects are based off SAP solutions, but we're really source agnostic. Like our HR planning solution, you've probably may have seen some of the webinars I've run on this. This actually can get data from, yes, SuccessFactors, SAP, but we've had projects with Workday, PeopleSoft, and other solutions. And so this really enables us to implement it, be very flexible in what sources are used to implement it. But today, what we're going to be using is really our P&L report book. Looking at this here, so typical report where you have your budget versus actuals. You may have seen our webinars, and we actually have this one in a past webinar. So if this is something that you want to understand this report a bit better, I really encourage you to go and have a look on our website. We have a YouTube channel where all these are recorded here. I won't spend too much time explaining this report, just wanted to give an overview. So you have your bridge report. Initially, waterfall was limited, but the official release for this kind of waterfall chart, it is supported. So if you go on the websites, it says there are limitations around waterfall charts. This is not one of them. So this is something that can be supported going into SAC. Then having a comparison report like this, that actually took it was a bit of a challenge, because the way to build a screen like this is actually totally different. I mentioned earlier that in a new model, we can have multiple measures. Well, and for example, one measure for local currency, one measure for group currency. So that makes it very easy to map it then to the different accounts. So you would have your column with local currency, group currency, and then organize all of this. But these month-to-date, quarter-to-date, year-to-date concepts are also based on that same measure. So although we had built currency as a dimension in our report book, now these are measures in our month-to-date, quarter-to-date, year-to-date definitions are also measure-based. So one of the challenges, and I'll get into the equivalent here, this is on the new model, starting to build the same report, you'll end up having to build a month-to-date local currency, year-to-date local currency. You can no longer have the currency dimension, since these are different measures. What does that mean from a modeling perspective? And that's where we're going to go here directly in your model. If you look at typical SAC, if you use SAC today, you set up your account dimension. I'll open it very quickly. And sorry if that's a bit technical for some people. I'm going to go back to the report in a second. And within this account, you have your real hierarchy. So operating income, gross profit, net sales. So from a P&L perspective, that's all defined. So you're able to use this, and everything is based on this. There's nothing else to bother with. And this works quite well. And if you need to do currency conversions, it's a bit more of a pain. This is where we had built on our model currency as a dimension, which allowed us to apply currency exchanges through scripts in the back end that updated the different dimension values. So if you entered everything in local currency, you then ran a script and it applied exchange rate and loaded it in group currency. That brought flexibility. But what's interesting here now is that you have your amount in local currency, your amount in group currency, amount in company code currency, and these are all stored separately. This way you don't have a dimension, and you can plan all your screens using these 3 different measures at the top of your report. But now if you need month to date, you need to define month to date for local currency and month to date for group currency, which are 2 separate ones. So it requires a little bit more effort to build it this way, but then afterwards you have a lot of flexibility. I'll show you in a minute. So here I have my actuals, my budget, month to date, year to date. And just from a design perspective, obviously we're talking new models, so I have to go to designer just a little bit. So I have my 2 measures here, okay? Year to date, month to date. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to add my measure that's defined in the model, which is a live amount in group currency. So what is this? This is actually a measure defined in the model that is based off my year to date information. So for example, I have here on my annual budget, it gives me 81.71 in group currency. Group currency here is US dollars. There's something that's not right from an actual perspective, but so let's focus on the budget right now. I just noticed. So you have your exchange rate applied. So if I was to change my sales rebates, my sales rebates now would be minus 200. So automatically start entering this, and live as I'm doing it, I'm able to see the effects impact automatically. So I'd be able to build out a report now easily as I'm entering it, where I see the variations. In some cases, I could play with different exchange rates. Right now, I mapped it on one exchange rate table, but you actually have options afterwards to how you want to apply those different exchange rates on average, closing, and having all of this live within your report as you build it out. Something that's interesting in this as well is as you have your calculations, it's here, create a calculations, you can add additional ones within your report as currency conversion that are really going to be live. So here you design, again, these are the measures you've defined. So company code currency, group currency, local currency. So imagine you have a source that's BW or S4, you load these 3 measures automatically. So this is all provided by your source system, but then you want to start playing with how you want to show them. So since entries, for example, will be planned in local currency, you may want to be able to provide some dynamic conversion based on a dimension. So local currency based on the dimension, or you want to have it fixed. Everything from local currency, I want to see that in US dollars. Okay, so in my case, if you haven't noticed, we're in Canada. So everything I've been entering is in Canada, but I could create a separate one, which is US dollars, and you can then define, you can have different versions of your exchange rates from actuals, budget planning, dynamic one, depending on some parameters in your accounts, and what is it based on, booking date, -1, a fixed date. So all the exchange rates on a specific date for this one. So for example, you could have fixed date. So you have all your amounts converted as to 1st of January, for example, and then you create another calculated measure with the book date now, or book date or current date, and then you can see directly the FX impact just by building those calculations within your report. So a lot of flexibility from currency conversion perspective that you can implement directly in your report without having to rebuild everything. Okay, so this is quite interesting from a solution perspective. Now, the other big improvement I mentioned earlier was the data wrangling. So loading data into our model. So this is something that anyone who's been building in SAC for a while, you all know how it can be quite painful if you need to change something. And well, you built your mapping, everything. You know, you want to change your mapping, you want to add some criterias. Well, too bad. You'll need to re-import, redefine all your mapping, and retest everything. So that can be quite a pain, even more so when you're building a solution and then, oh, forgot that field. Oh, forgot that rule. Oh, that value is not coming the way we want. Oh, we want to remap this account to another account. So and it's done in the actual load. But now with the new model, it's quite flexible to go back in there and change all those rules. There are still limitations, okay? But you have lots of improvements that in the past, if you've been using SAC, you could only go and look at those mappings. So here they are. So if you made a mistake, well, you have it in your face. That's a mistake I made. Now let's start over. For sure, if you're starting on SAC, it makes you a great developer because you start building up data wrangling scripts all the time because you rebuild them. But after a while, it kind of gets tiresome. So in this case here, I use Google Drive. I just dropped a file there to go and access it. But this could be S4, BW, BPC, any other kind of source you want, and non-SAP sources as well, SQL database as well. So I could just refresh it, which would bring new data, obviously from a Google Drive file. It's going to be very similar. I didn't change a file. And I could edit it. So edit means I'm going to be able to go and change all this mapping. And that's been, from a development standpoint, that's been an incredible improvement for us. Obviously, the first thing it's going to do, though, it's going to rerun the extraction because data wrangling means data. So it needs to go and get the current data. So this, you could have changed the criteria with the edit query. That's been there since before. That's still there, so you change your filters there. But here we're really going to look at all the business rules. So if I click edit, so we are retrieving data. So now it's really calling my Google Drive file in this case, looking what's in there. It's finished. It has the import, and I'm going to end up into the data wrangling screen. So building out the solution, that really helped us. One thing to keep in mind, though, it was an inconvenience in the old solution, still is now. If you forgot a field, it's still not going to be there. Okay, so if you forgot, oh, I wanted to have a profit center. Profit center is not there. Well, too bad. In this case, you need to start over still, because where you get new flexibility is at the prepare data. So if you need to apply some specific rules, for example, here I mapped a new account, I can go in my transform log. So I had to apply the rule. I can now go change this rule. So I put new account is replace sales rebates by new rebates. And now actually, no, that was a mistake. I just want call it rebates. So it's now applied, and if I finish the import, now it's going to be updated to rebates. Again, if you've never looked at SAC, probably figure, okay, that's basic ETL. Why are you showing this? Well, in the past, that's a kind of small change in terms of script that you could not do. So switch if you have all your months in columns. In this one, they're already in rows, so that's not an issue. But if there's a new column that comes in, You could unpivot it to bring it here, and other transformations, cleaning up the data. There's a whole script thing screen you can use. That was already there, but now you really have complete flexibility, playing with it, coming back, updating it, making different assignments into it. So that's all the data preparation you can do in SAC. So it hasn't really improved from what you can do, but the fact that you can come back and change it, that's the major improvement that's available in here. Then map to target. As you can see, they've really split it up now. It's clearer as well. If anyone has used the other setup where you had your table for prepare, but then when you map to switch to tile, but it wasn't clear why you would want to switch. It was just two toggles. Now there's a clear process as you build it out. So you don't need to, okay, where am I? What am I supposed to do? That drop down really guides you through it. So map to target. So I have everything. In this case, my source file did not have group currency and company code currency. So what I'm actually going to be able to do once I'm in the system, group currency has a fixed currency of US dollars. Amount and company code currency actually gets the currency from the company code dimension. So all I'm going to have to do is do a small data action that will copy my local currency values into these two measures, and automatically everything is going to be converted, and I'm going to be able to use these three indicators going forward. Much easier to maintain. So these are the unmapped columns. All the other ones you see they're grayed out. That's because they're mapped here. So if there are changes you need to do, you could come here and have a look at it. For example, I don't know, customer ID, it's not the right one. I can delete it. You can see it's right here. And then I can go and find the right field that I want to map into it. So in this case, it is the only one I have. So it's just a question of drag and drop. And now my customer is mapped into it. You may notice that in my file, it's all no customers. But obviously you could have different value. Same thing in a different thing. For example, in this planning P&L, I don't have material. So right here it's mapped. Let's imagine material is not available. Okay, I just don't map it. Now, if I go to the next screen, review import, it's going to tell me we did not map material. Target has not been mapped. So that's an issue I have here. So it would recommend that I go back, map to target, and let's imagine I don't have a field here. So it's just as simple as set a default value or set default value to pound. Again, someone who's been working in this data wrangling, there used to be kind of a pain to the right where you could go and set those default values. It was hidden in the middle of 25 different options. Now it's actually quite clear. You can see it. And then in your mapping, it's quite obvious. It's unassigned to all rows. So I did not use the source field. I decided to map it directly. So this is something else that really I find this whole mapping exercise, once you've done the prepare data, you've done adjustment, or you realize you need to keep the zeros, you need to left pad with the zeros, you need to change the data type. Actually, data type, let me get back to this one. Right now, I said next. So it's looking at my data. Are there any issues that will stop me from loading? Now that I've settled my mapping, we're good. Dimension restriction is going to look, are values there? Is it going to cause an issue? Or are there going to be rejects? Data quality issues, other issues that will appear that will cause issue when I load. Right now, it's all clean. But honestly, that's made it a lot simpler to debug loading into the solution and just save and exit. Honestly, if you worked in SAC for a while, just saying save and exit, it's a lifesaver. If you've played in the current data wrangling solution, there's no save and exit. You either load or go out and start over some other thing. So right now, save and exit, and you'll be able to really be able to come back, complete your development the following day. Even more so if you have scripts. You know, when you build scripts, sometimes you don't have it right away. You need to go and investigate something. So you can save and exit, come back later and complete your work. So lots of added flexibility. But what I wanted to go to, if I go back to prepare data, and I did not plan that in my source file here, but one thing I remember having, let's imagine it's only this one. No, oh, it's detail. Sorry, I'm on the transform log still. And here we are. So customer ID is a string, okay? And well, I have 114 lines in my Excel file, and it's all like this. But you can, I find it very simple now to go and change this. One of our project we had was you had GL account, okay? And the GL account we're loading was the one that's left padded with 4 zeros. So it's 4 zeros and then your GL account number. Looks basic, but our master data was set up this way with the 4 zeros. So when we loaded here at first, it saw GL account, set it up as a number. Obviously, yeah, and that's going to cause me an issue here because it's not a number. But for a GL account, converting it as a number removed the left padded zeros. So let's imagine. So that's my GL account. I put it as a number. Well, automatically, it's going to remove this. And then when I load that GL account in my master data still has the zeros. So it's not going to recognize these accounts. So when I go and validate my import, it's obviously going to give me errors saying GL account's not good, not available in master data and everything. So that was really a great, I know it was possible to change, but I find it so much clearer here when you work with these different data types and these different columns. Makes it much simpler, much more intuitive when you actually build it out. So we had all of this built out, come back here, and then I'm actually able to run my import. You can revalidate. It's going to show you how many records would be rejected. And coming back to the slide I showed you at the beginning, I said master data import is a limitation. What does that mean? Well, just look at this here. All of these dimensions, they have properties. So if we look at customer, I have customer name, I have customer address, phone number, other categories that are involved in this. I can only map it to the key. I do not, when I load my data from a transactional perspective, so in this case, loading all my GL journal entries, I can only map it to the actual customer ID. Same thing for GL account. If GL account has a balance sheet flag, I don't know, that you need to load, or in this case, it would more be an income statement flag that you want to load at the same time. You cannot do it here. You absolutely, for all these properties now, you do not have the option of loading these properties in master data when you load your model. They have to be done separately, completely, when you load your master data. So it forces you to split these two functions. In some cases, yeah, loading customer master data, material master data, that's fine. We're used to loading those separately. But in some cases, it's just a small flag that is in my transactional data. So mapping it here was a way of doing that was quite simple, and it would enrich master data as you were loading your transactions. It is not possible. Okay, if you look into Roadmap, Roadmap Explorer, they do write, they will be enhancing master data load, but right now you still need to use the old data wrangling if you want to load master data properties. So one of the big drawbacks in this is you really have to design your dimensions perfectly before you do it. If you were building public dimensions though, which is the way we've kind of prioritized building out our model, it's still not as bad because you were already used to loading your dimensions. But if you had a lot of private dimensions, you're loading through the model flat file load or just transactional load. In this case, you won't like this new model. You'll need to either wait and change your way of thinking, or maybe wait a little bit before you do go and update it. So that's from a master data support. If just to give you just a bit more of an example, I'm going to go, that's the one I'm in the model. So yeah, you saw the key here. I'm just going to go back, save and exit. See, so saving data, saving all of what I've just done, but I did not load it in my model. It just stays available. We're going to go back to the model itself. So the data is here. It hasn't been loaded in the system. So if I do refresh, it is going to import new data. But what I wanted to show you, model structure. I'm going back to where all the different dimensions are for this model. So you have all of these, and let's imagine sales, SAP material group, probably not the best example I took there. Well, yes, just the hierarchy and the descriptions. You need to load those separately. You cannot load those as you load your transactional data. So you'll be able to load CP0102 as you load your P&L in this case, but the description and the hierarchy node, that needs to be done separately. Okay, and that hasn't changed. It's the exact data management process that existed before. You'll need to map it here, and then if you forget something, you need to go back and start over. So for now, that hasn't been updated. This is really limited to fact data. So lots of improvements there, but still, we're still waiting for some improvements from a master data perspective. But if you think about it and you design your model properly and have all these dimensions loaded separately from your fact data, it's still not that bad of a limitation. Just in some cases, you'll feel like you're loading the same thing twice because the only way to load a certain property is to use the transactional data. So yes, that does happen. And in this case, it's a bit of a pain. So master data support, this is where we found the main limitation. Allocations, conversion, I've mentioned about it, and cross-model copy from between the models. These are just plain straight limitations that have a clear impact when you try to rebuild planning models around finance. So that's pretty much all I wanted to walk through today. These are really the lessons learned we had implementing that report book. As we go forward, as new releases are out, we'll try to implement larger new model solutions that support. Obviously, we'll need data actions between models. We'll need allocations to go much further. So I'll clearly be following that up. And once that becomes available, do follow our postings for a second version of this webinar. So John, I don't know if there were any questions. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate. There's a question tab. You can submit your question in there and we can answer them live, or we can reply later. If you put a question, we can reply by email afterwards if you'd rather. So thank you for your time. Hope you have a great day. And John, back to you.
Thanks, Eric. And just looking at questions, one question here, for companies who, and maybe you touched on this a little bit already, but for companies who are, kind of in-flight implementation, what would be recommended approach as far as, evaluating the new model? Should they, deploy that now? Should they wait and stick with the existing model and evaluate this in a few months? I'm sure, a lot of people are kind of struggling with that question, right?
Yeah. For basic analytics, I'd try it out going with the new model. I think there's some very interesting functionalities in there. But for planning, if you're really building out a medium to complex planning solution that may require multiple models, may require allocations, you're not too sure. Since this is not out yet, I'd wait. I'd wait to see exactly if there are limitations on these functionalities once they come out in August, which is very soon. But until it's tested, I'd still wait a little bit before going too far with the new model.
Okay. All right. And looks like that's it. So yeah, thanks, Eric, for the great presentation, and thanks everyone for joining. Please, don't hesitate to reach out to us if we can, help you along on your journey. And you have our contact information. Eric's easy to look up here as well. So thanks all again, and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.